its last FOMC meeting, announced that QT is officially ending in December. So I think another big catalyst will be the launch of the next round of quantitative easing, which I believe is coming. I thought it would have actually happened already, so I'm kind of surprised they were able to make it through the entire year without doing it. But I think 2026 will be the year that they, crank up the presses again, especially if they continue to see weakness in the long run of the bond market. And then, of course, you do have, some court decisions, on the tariffs, on the firing of Lisa Cook. I think that could have implications for the dollar and only pulled back from a level that we reached for a day. Right? We had a quick move up, but the fact that we're just below 4,000 doesn't really feel like it's a pullback. It's only a pullback in relation to the fact that we almost hit 4,400, which was crazy in that it only took us maybe a week to get there from hitting 4,000. So if you throw that week or two out and just look at where we are, we've gone up a lot on the year. And I think sentiment, it's interesting how such a sharp decline can turn the sentiment to get everybody thinking that this is now potentially a bear market already in gold, and that there's a lot of downside risk. I think that's kind of what the market was trying to do in shaking out some of the newer entrants that, may not really have the conviction or maybe came in with some leverage and have been flushed out of the market. But we've created a lot more, nervousness so that we can climb that wall of worry. And so as far as I'm concerned, if this is a correction, it's probably already over. I don't think there's that much downside in the price of gold from here. And the same thing with silver. I mean, silver didn't hold above 50, but it did take out 50, which is something it never did really in 1980 or 2011. We got almost to 55. And now we've had a pullback, but, we're holding 48.50, which if you told people even a few months ago, silver would be at 48.50, they wouldn't be, oh my God, it's pulling back. They'd be very happy that silver was at this price. And especially the gold miners. I mean, gold pulling back to 3,900 is great for all these gold mining companies. They're making a ton of money at $3,900 gold. They're making a lot of money at $2,900 gold. And that never really got factored into the price. I just think we're early in a broader bull market. I think that investors, mainstream Wall Street investors, both institutional and retail, are just finally noticing gold and deciding that they should make it a part of their portfolio. And this is after, gold is up, 11, 12x this century. The Dow is down, close to 70% priced in gold since peaking in 1999. So gold has outperformed the markets, yet investors haven't even noticed that really until just recently. And I don't think that the fact that they've now decided that gold should be included in a portfolio, whereas before it had no place in a portfolio, I don't think that is going to change because, oh my God, now gold's 3,900 and not 4,300. I think you're going to start to see more accumulation of gold from investors who never bought any. And I think the central banks that have been the drivers for the past couple of years, I think they're actually going to pick up the pace of their gold buying. I think more central banks that weren't buying gold are now going to start buying as well. So I think there's a lot of new demand coming from gold, and I don't see a lot of new supply. I mean, there's some, but not nearly enough.
People who come to this event, people who are in gold, they're usually used to being the contrarian. So if they see the mainstream coming in, maybe they feel a little bit uncomfortable. So anything you'd say to those people?
Well, I think it's still contrarian in that now that the mainstream is dipping its toe in the water, it's still, a small percentage of mainstream investors. So I think we've got a ways to go before it's kind of a crowded trade. If you want to see, something that seems crowded or bubblicious, look at what happened in crypto. look at the enthusiasm. This is, I think, the oldest gold conference. It's been going on for, what is it, 50 years, the New Orleans conference. And there's more people here than last year, I think. But there's not 1,000 attendees. It's less. I forget, 600, 700. I was at the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas over the summer. There were 35, 40,000 people who paid to attend. So we're nowhere near there. We don't have that kind of level of interest or enthusiasm. And when I was at that conference, nobody was worried about the Bitcoin price going down. I mean, everybody was 100% convinced it was going to 1 million or higher. But here, you get a lot of people at the gold conference. Well, they're nervous that we could get a pullback, and they're not like crazy enthusiastic that we're going to be at $10,000, $20,000 gold next year. So I think it's still early. The people in Bitcoin they're convinced that they're early. And I was trying to point out, well, you have 35,000 people at a conference. It's not early. I've been going to investment conferences. That's the biggest one I've ever been to. And so that shows you that, a lot of people are already involved. You're not getting in on the ground floor when the conference is that big. And that didn't seem to be the trigger. I think we're going to get another rate cut, despite the fact that Powell kind of said it wasn't a lock. The markets kind of priced it in, and he kind of pushed back against that. But at the end of the day, I think there's going to be another cut, because I think the economic data is going to continue to disappoint. Now, we're not getting as much data as normal because of the government shutdown. But it's possible that they end that government shutdown and we get a deluge of bad economic data that could be a catalyst for another move up, in the price of gold, as people start to, factor that in. And the Fed, at its last FOMC meeting, announced that QT is officially ending in December. So I think another big catalyst will be the launch of the next round of quantitative easing, which I believe is coming. I thought it would have actually happened already, so I'm kind of surprised they were able to make it through the entire year without doing it. But I think 2026 will be the year that they, crank up the presses again, especially if they continue to see weakness in the long run of the bond market. And then, of course, you do have, some court decisions, on the tariffs, on the firing of Lisa Cook. I think that could have implications for the dollar and for gold.
So do you think quantitative easing starts under Powell, or do we wait until his term is over? We've got this new Fed chair in that's probably going to be more Trump aligned. How are you seeing it?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I forget when does Powell leave? Midway through the year, May? I mean, I guess it's about 50-50 that, they can hold off on QE. It kind of depends on what happens. But I think if you start to see a big move down on the stock market or something that might scare the administration, there'll be a lot more pressure. And we'll see. I mean, today, we're getting a decent decline in stocks. I know Bitcoin, broke below 100,000 for the first time in about 4 months. And, that could be a bit of a leading indicator that, people are starting to take risk off. And it may not just be crypto. It may be a broader based risk off trade, which also could see some money flowing back into gold as a safe haven investment. And I think as the air comes out of the Bitcoin bubble and people begin to question the digital gold narrative, which they should, because it's just a meme, to the extent that people wake up to the reality that Bitcoin isn't digital gold, well, then maybe they'll buy real gold instead. And so there could be a source of some extra gold buying from people who either get out of Bitcoin or, instead of buying Bitcoin, decide to buy the real gold, right? Instead of some fake version of it.
When you look at the U.S. economy, how bad are you thinking it could get? What's your vision there?
Well, I mean, I think things are pretty bad. I mean, if you look at the most recent polls on Trump's approval, his approval on the economy is the lowest it's been of either of his presidencies. He only has a 30% approval rating